everyone, and welcome to a tutorial. So I'm going to show you guys how I do my printables for those of you who want to learn how to do trace files and all of that in Silhouette. Now I do these a little bit differently probably than most people because but basically right now if you see on the screen the background on where your mat is, mine is on landscape mode. Now if you do have a portrait, make sure that is on portrait mode, and that will actually change the way your paper is. The first thing you have to do is open up your file in Silhouette, obviously. Now if you want to use the black file, make sure that your settings are pretty much the same as this one, because you need both of these for this to work. That way you can use them all at once. Now, basically what you have to do here is open up your file. Now, I actually don't have registration marks on this. This varies between Silhouettes and Cameos. Now, I personally actually do my registration marks in landscape mode just because it's the way that I feed it through the Silhouette. I just do it landscape mode, and it's just easier for me to do this. And I do this also with my regular sticker papers, and also when I'm designing my pages are right side up technically. This is a little bit different. Now I actually added my registration marks here in Illustrator, and then I just transfer that file over into Silhouette. But this exact same thing works for both Illustrator or Silhouette. So if you want to know what I did, actually just added the file here. I actually have all my registration marks already set in Illustrator, and then I just put the file in this, and I kind of moved it over just a tiny bit. All the items are actually within the registration marks, and then I just saved it and then moved it over into the Silhouette Studio. If you see on the left side, I kind of like scooted this entire sheet a little bit over. Now you can actually do that in Silhouette Studio. For those of you who do not have Illustrator, my registration marks don't really change all that much. But anyway, now I'm going to do this in portrait mode because it's like the most common one for those of you who have portraits and not cameos. You can also do the same thing if you have a cameo. So once you have your file opened, obviously, all you have to do is add your registration marks. So here in style, you would want to select your Silhouette that you have. So if you have the original one, you would have to obviously select type 2. And if you have the other ones, it would be type 1. So the most common one is type 1. Now you have all of your registration marks here. Now, personally, I actually have all of mine in the thickness all the way to the smallest they can be. Now, I have actually heard people tell me that this doesn't work for them at all, and that it has to be on the biggest setting and like the biggest thickness. So you might have to play around with this and do a trial and error for your specific machine. Mine is completely fine doing this on the smallest settings, but you might have to play around with it. So obviously this is covering the very top of these headers. Now if you actually don't need these headers, then it kind of doesn't matter. But if you do, because you want those headers, all you have to do is move these little bars here and set that to what you want. So I'm actually going to leave the first two on the default, I think, and then just move the very top one here. Now you can also move your page down if you want, because I have heard that if they're in the crosshatch right here, that it won't cut correctly. Basically, all I'm going to do is move the top inset and then the bottom inset, and then I moved my page down a little. After you basically have your registration marks, you can print this page. Now, if you have a file, for example, someone else's printables or something that already have registration marks on them, basically what you have to do is match those registration marks to that specific file, or else it's not going to work. So this is kind of like what I do when I do all of my printables. All of my registration marks are already pre-made, and I just match up the file, and it's just easier for me to do that. So I already have a default for all of these. So the top one is at 0.5, the right is also at 0.5, and the rest are at the lowest that they can be. So I just move those over, and then the top inset and the bottom inset are always at the very last ones. So that's just my default, and that's the way that I do it. So you might have to play around with it and move it over. Basically what you do if you have a file with registration marks already on them. That way you just match those up. Now I'm going to actually save this file right here. Actually, the easiest way to do this is actually do a trace file. Now, since we moved the page, we have to get our black files. And this is the black cut file. So I'm going to get the second layer. I'm going to add this on top. And then what I'm going to do is make sure that this is lined up to the bottom picture. Now, you just go to the align section of the page, align to the left, to the top, or however you have it. And this should be mirrored on top of that. So, and then for the third layer, all you have to do is trace this black file. So you just use the select trace area and go over this. Now you can see all of this is pretty much going to light up yellow. Now I'm going to move these filters things around and make sure that I have all of those. Now the tricky one is probably the headers most of all because they're so close together, but you can actually also individually trace them. But the key is to actually just kind of play around with it and get as much of the outlines to show up in yellow as possible. Like the trace outer edge, and that should work. Now you can actually take the black file down if you want. So the only one that actually didn't trace is this top one. So I'm going to actually do this over again. I'm going to delete this trace file, and I'm going to do the trace file starting just the boxes, and then I'm just going to go in and do the other ones. So here is my trace file. You don't have to go all the yellow. As long as this is traced all the way around that, it should work. And then I'm going to delete that and then make sure that I also delete these. So you can actually just select this and just delete those points, or you can use the eraser tool. So we have all my boxes done, and just because I don't want this to move, I'm going to do a second tracing file and get the black ones again. I'm going to do select trace area, and I'm just going to select all of the headers here and just kind of move around the high pass filter one, and it looks like I got all of them. So if all of them don't get traced, you can easily just do a smaller section, and sometimes that actually helps making sure that they're all there. Now, since this is overlapping a little bit, I have to delete the bottom right here just to clean it up a tiny bit. Now, if the file that you have does not have a black tracing file, what you can do easily is, here, let me show you guys on a different layer. So we have on layer 5. So say you don't have a tracing file, you can actually move this, make it all like black and white in Photoshop if you want, and then just transfer that file in so you guys can do that. Because sometimes the select trace area doesn't work. If there is artwork on there, it'll like try to pick up all the artwork, and it kind of just doesn't work. Basically, you just have to go to your tools on the side, and since this is normally rectangles, it might be a little bit easier. So all you have to do is draw your rectangles all along this. Now, all you have to do is kind of just move this around. Now, if you are doing an Erin Condren one, the Erin Condrens are about like 1.5 to 1.9 ish in height. So this will work pretty much. Now I do this pretty much, I just kind of like copy and paste them all and just kind of like move them to where I want them. I select them all and then I just align them, even all of those out, and then I'll group those together. So you do is remember Command G to group those together, and that will work. And since the bottom one is also the same size, I just align those and then I just move this all the way to the top with the arrow keys on my keyboard. I'm going to show you guys what this looks like right now, and it's pretty much the same. Now, I believe it was this file, like layer 3, that had the original ones. So they're close enough that you can't even tell. Now, once you have all of your cut files, just make sure you save this and save this as the shop name. And if there is like either 1 printable, 2 printables, or 3, make sure you number that. So this is actually page 1. Now, since I only really need 1 layer, and then add my cut files to this. I'm just going to line this up because it'll be close enough to what I need it for. And I'm just going to zoom in just a tad to make sure that they're aligned. And they're close enough that you won't really notice them. Yeah, so now all you have to do is print this. So select your printer and then print that out. Make sure your printer settings are where you want them to if you're using photo paper or like glossy paper. All right, so now I loaded the sheet into my Cameo. All I have to do now is send this to cut. Now all I'm going to do is go to my cut settings. Now I actually have different cut settings than you might have. All silhouette machines pretty much are different than most people. Now, I actually have mine personally set to blade 1, speed 8, and then thickness 10. Yours might be thickness 40 for all I know. So you really have to check your settings to see which is better for you. Once you have those figured out, you might have to do a couple of test cuts. You might do a lot of test cuts to make sure that that's your setting, and it might change over time because either the blade gets dull, your mat might be like too new or too old. Maybe the double cut works for you. It really depends on your settings, and each silhouette will be different. Right, so now I'm just going to do this for the rest of my files. Now that you kind of like know what to do, I'm just going to kind of like zip on through this real quick. Save that as the printables 2, and then that file is done, and then we have printables 3. I just grab my tracing file. Now I'm gonna actually do a different version for this one, and I'm going to show you guys how I do an offset. So I'm still going to do the black tracing file for this one, and then I'm going to do the same thing for these right here. Trace the outer edge, and then all of the words as well. Now for all of the deco stickers here, I'm actually going to do an offset. I'm going to do this tracing file or the tracing over the deco stickers again, but this time I'm going to add an offset. So that pretty much kind of covers most of those right here. So you can actually move the threshold just a tiny bit to make sure that they are definitely covered. Now I'm going to do a trace outer edge for those. Now I'm actually going to select these and then click the offset selected shape button, and if you can see that it did an outline on all of those. Now I actually have to move these because these outlines are actually huge. So I usually do either a 0.04 and sometimes I can go down to like a 0.2. It kind of just depends on how you want them. So I'm just gonna do let's do a 3/8 because it's kind of like in the middle of what I usually do, and I kind of just trace all of those right there. Now you actually have to make sure that you delete the inside part of this, or else it's going to do a double layer cut. So you just select the middle part and delete it, and you're done. So when I actually cut these out, there's going to be a small white space around all of these. For some reason you want an internal offset, like to make sure that there's a bleed on this Hello Weekend or these stickers right here, and select those and then go to an internal offset and then move that. And I'm just going to do a 0.02 on there. You have to make sure that you select the outer edge and then delete that, and that should cover all of those. Make sure you add your registration files though. Just a quick reminder for that. Alright, so here's a close-up of these real quick. As you can see, the Hello Weekend did cut just around all of the pink area. And there's a space around all of these deco stickers right here. And then there is a very small bleed on these as well. The black files are actually just around all of these, but the way you guys can do this is just really simple. Even if you don't even have the black cut files, technically you don't need them. It just makes things a little bit easier to do. And if you go through like the weekend banner right here and lift this up, it just comes up almost exactly to what it needed to be. Here is the other one. This one again is all like just squares and rectangles pretty much, so that one was easy to do. However, if you do not have a silhouette, my files are pretty much made, so you can easily just cut out the columns in here. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like more tutorials or any more videos like this, make sure you guys leave a comment down below and give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye everyone.